This video will focus on the different types of nuclear reactions. So you have two learning goals here. Number one, to be able to distinguish and determine the type of nuclear reaction that's happening, and then number two, to actually be able to write those reactions. Okay, in class, I introduced the concept of gamma, beta, and alpha in terms of what the particles look like. In this video, we'll get more specific and talk about how to write the chemical reaction. So our first radiation we're going to look at is alpha radiation. Alpha radiation is when the nucleus is unstable and emits an alpha particle. And an alpha particle is essentially a helium nuclei. Okay? 2 protons and 2 neutrons being emitted from the nucleus. The reason this particle may be emitted is if there's too many protons, or in general if the mass is too high for the ratio that we want to have. Part of what we measure for all forms of nuclear radiation is how damaging they are. Since radiation are usually considered higher energy particles, the question is how high energy are they and what can they do? And because the alpha radiation is a very large particle, it can't travel very far. It's pretty heavy, and it can't travel really far before it probably interacts with some electrons to make it a little bit more stable. And it has very low penetration in terms of on a human body. Okay? You could shield it with your skin. Your skin is a great shield from alpha radiation. Paper, clothes, all those things actually prevent alpha radiation from getting inside your body. The only problem here is if you, for some reason, ingest a particle that may be undergoing alpha radiation. So there's an example up at the top of the screen of uranium-238 going through alpha radiation, right? It's losing that helium nuclei with 4 total subatomic particles, 2 protons, 2 neutrons, which changes your proton number by 2, and it changes your mass number by 4. We can also do an alpha radiation problem with polonium-194. If polonium-194 goes through alpha decay, if you look up the atomic number for polonium, it's 84, right? And that's going to make the alpha particle, which is 4 and 2. That's what you have to memorize. And then you have to affect this to make, in the end, the left and the right add up to be the same. So if I take 4 away from that, I'm down to 190. If I take 2 away from this, I'm down to 82. And then to figure out what symbol goes there, you would look up on your periodic table what particle corresponds to that atomic number 82, and it's lead. So that is a nuclear reaction for polonium-194 going through alpha radiation. Our next form of nuclear radiation will be beta decay. Okay. And beta decay is a decomposition of a neutron into a proton. And in the process, you emit an electron. Okay. So that beta particle is oftentimes notated as an electron. There's no difference in mass for that electron because the electron has no mass. But then the charge is basically a -1 on the atomic number because you took away a proton to make it. This type of nuclear decay would happen if you have too many neutrons in your nucleus. The particle itself is very tiny, has no mass. Okay? It moves at fairly high speeds because we're talking about just an electron moving. So its ability to do damage, it has something that we call medium penetration. Okay? You can shield it with a thick sheet of lead, aluminum foil. A couple layers of aluminum foil can actually protect you from any kind of beta radiation, but it can actually get through a little bit of your skin. Okay? So in that case, external exposure is a concern because it can get through your skin and start damaging cells. And as I said here, aluminum foil, wool, lots of metals can actually protect you from this beta decay. Examples over there on the right then, we have the carbon-14, which has too many neutrons for what it wants. And if it goes through beta decay, it'll emit one of those neutrons and convert it to a proton. So what it gets to is a more optimal ratio of protons to neutrons. If you have too many neutrons in comparison to protons, if you can convert one of them, then you might get down to a ratio that you like. So another example we can do for beta decay is the beta decay for thorium. So for this guy, for thorium, mass of 234, and if you look it up on the periodic table, it has an atomic number of 90. If that goes through beta decay, it's going to make that beta particle, which has no mass, but has basically a negative charge on it. So in the end, the particle that's created, you don't change your mass number. But since in the end, the right and the left have to add up to be the same, and in the process of beta decay, you basically add a proton, make a neutron into a proton. Our new mass number is 91. And if you look it up on the periodic table, you'll find that that is your chemical symbol for atomic number 91. The last form of naturally occurring nuclear radiation that we're going to encounter a lot is gamma radiation. And this is unique from the other two because it is pure energy. Right? It's actually on our electromagnetic spectrum. It's energy being emitted through the nucleus changing. So generally speaking, it does accompany other forms of decay because it's just pure energy that has no mass, right? It'll travel at high speeds. It'll travel at the speed of light. And we know this is the most damaging form of radiation. It can actually penetrate all the way into your cells inside your body. So it's very damaging to human cells. To shield it, you need several layers of concrete. Very, very thick material is our only way to actually prevent gamma radiation from getting inside our body. So if you're around gamma radiation, chances are you will be taking it into your body. An example equation where gamma radiation is used is over on the right. In the process of making thorium into radium, you emit an alpha particle, but there's also gamma radiation emitted from the nucleus. There are two other forms of nuclear radiation we don't see quite as often. Okay? There are more things that we see through artificial transmutation. And one of them is called electron capture. So you can actually convert a proton into a neutron by having the proton capture an electron and then change itself to be a neutron. So it's basically, instead of emitting a beta particle, it's when you're taking in a beta particle. You're capturing that electron, reversing back from a proton into a neutron. You'll do this if you have too many protons, right? Because you'll want a proton to become a neutron potentially. The other form, again, that we don't see as often is positron radiation. It's another way to convert a proton into a neutron. And in this case, the particle is not actually an electron, it's a positron. Okay, this is antimatter, which is why we don't see it quite as often. So it's a particle, it's the size of an electron, but has the opposite charge. It's basically like the emission of a proton from the nucleus. Okay, you're changing that proton into a neutron and emitting the positron from the nucleus. So those are the 5 different types. Again, the main thing you want to do right now is memorize the nuclear particle that's being emitted. Like memorize that a positron is that E with no mass and a +1, and that an alpha particle is a 4 and a 2 helium. So you know how to make the nuclear equations, because you can't do beta decay or alpha decay or electron capture if you don't know what the nuclear radiation particle is comprised of. Go ahead and do the form. Have a nice night.